Hello, hello. Welcome to Deep Parts Work for Anxiety. I am so happy that you are joining me today. Say hello in the comments if you're here live, and thank you for being here. So today we are going to be looking at what in your subconscious feeds your anxiety. So last week on this live stream, I did a little exercise called Anxiety Relief and Rewiring with Havening. And that was really for when your anxiety is like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. It's like SOS, I'm feeling so much anxiety. I need relief right now. And that is a beautiful exercise to do when you're feeling really high anxiety and also to rewire those patterns of high anxiety. But there's another level of healing that I find is really necessary for people who have anxious thoughts, worried thoughts, anxious feelings all the time. And that is we want to go into the subconscious to see what in there is contributing to your anxiety. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Karenna with Hello Inner Light. I'm a trauma-informed emotional healing coach, and I specialize in an emotional processing technique that really helps you get to the subconscious layers of your issues, helps you get to your core wounds. It helps you get to the unprocessed emotions that you haven't been able to process previously that are still alive in your subconscious, that are still affecting your life today. So I work with clients going into their subconscious every single day. And so I've seen a lot of people who can do some really deep levels of healing on their anxious thoughts and their anxious feelings just by identifying what's going on in the subconscious. And me personally, I've had a really big journey with anxiety in my life. So I spent most of my teens and 20s and even into my early 30s highly anxious, like really, really, really anxious. And actually, it was before my teens too. It was my whole life. Um, and I looked like one of those really functional people, right? Like it wasn't like anxiety was debilitating me on the outside, but on the inside, I felt anxious in almost all circumstances. And especially I had really, really high social anxiety. So I just hated being in crowds. I hated small talk. I hated meeting new people. All of it just felt really uncomfortable to me. And so I just started kind of hiding from the world. I went out less and less. I met new people less and less. I avoided crowds and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of worked, right? I mean, in some ways, that is a way to get away from the social anxiety. But really, what I needed to get to the roots of that social anxiety so that I didn't have to limit my life in that way. And by the way, it wasn't just social anxiety. My internal anxiety was also feeding extreme perfectionism, which is really an uncomfortable way to live. Very, very high levels of self-criticism and self-judgment, probably because of that perfectionism, because I was striving to be so perfect because I was anxious deep down that I wasn't good enough. So my anxiety was feeding a lot of different things in my life that were feeling really uncomfortable and limiting my life, limiting my happiness, limiting my joy, limiting my ability to connect with others, limiting my ability to connect with myself, limiting me going for my dreams, limiting for me even dreaming big at all, right? So anxiety is this big experience. And so I did lots of things to try to work with my anxiety, like long time of meditating. I learned meditation in my 20s. I tried yoga. I went to therapy for a whole decade, which I'm grateful I did. I'm lucky that I got to have those experiences, the meditation, the yoga, the therapy, all of that did help to some degree, but still it felt like my anxiety was here and we were just like inching it down tiny bits at a time. And then in my late 30s, I found this technique called regenerating images in memory, and it brought my anxiety down by like 50% in about 3 months of utilizing that. So today, that is what we're going to be doing together. We're going to be doing a regenerating images in memory exercise together, which actually takes kind of a long time. It will be one of the longest exercises I've probably done on YouTube, but it's really effective for getting at those roots. And so what I started realizing as I did regenerating images in memory, which is an emotional processing technique, and it really helps you get to what's in the subconscious instead of just working on the conscious level. We're working in deeper levels of our psyche and our body and those things that may not be so apparent to our conscious mind. And what I really discovered as I did regenerating images and memory, which is what helped me get rid of my anxiety in such a significant way, is that when I was little, I just experienced being shamed a lot. There was a lot of perfectionism, a lot of upset around mistakes, a lot of panic sort of feelings that I experienced when I was little. And so that had sunk in to my implicit narratives around the world, about the world. So our implicit narratives are like lenses through which we see the world. And they really define who we think we are, what we think we're deserving of, how we think others are going to treat us, and what we expect about the world. So I always tell my students that our implicit narratives live in our bodies, they live in our cells, they live in our guts, they live in our posture, in our breath, in our hips, in our patterns of tension. And they answer questions like, do I deserve love? Is the world a safe place to be? Am I allowed to be myself in relationship, or do I have to sacrifice big parts of myself? What do I deserve? Will others look at me lovingly, or will others look at me with derision? Like all of these answers, and all of these answers are what we deduced about the world, about ourselves, and about others when we were very, very young. They come from our early childhood, so they're kind of pre-verbal, most of them, and they imbue every interaction that we have, right? Every time that we go out into the world, we carry with us these implicit narratives of who am I, what are others like, and what is the world like? And it shapes every single interaction. So my implicit narratives had become, when I was very, very young, had become, I deserve to be shamed, and the world will shame me, right? And so, of course, I had social anxiety because I was interacting in the world. I was projecting my emotional experiences from when I was very young, maybe in my subconscious, right? I mean, I can consciously remember some of that too, but it really lives in your cells on a subconscious level. So I was projecting my implicit narratives of I deserve to be shamed and other people are going to shame me onto every interaction that I had with the world. I was carrying that with me. And what I came to realize when I was able to get in touch with that inner child part who really carried that anxiety of being shamed, I was able to not only be there for her, care about her and hear her and listen to how painful those experiences in early childhood were for her, but I was also able to do a little bit of like, wait, when I go out in the world, almost nobody shames me, like it's not true. I mean, it's not that I've never ever been shamed as an adult, but it's pretty rare. It's not actually my experience. And through the regenerating images and memory, I was able to create a new feeling state, a new implicit narrative of like, the world is actually much safer than I generally have thought it is. And even if I do get shamed, I'm going to have my own back. It's going to be okay. And it didn't happen overnight. Like I said, it happened in 3 months, which is shocking, given how hard I had tried up until that point to get rid of my anxiety. And I still have some anxiety, but now it's much more situational. It's more like, oh, XYZ is stressing me out. And so I feel anxious. And then I'm still able to deal with it better, but instead of just feeling anxious all the time. So that's one example of something that could be going on in your subconscious that could be causing you to have chronic or consistent thoughts and feelings that have to do with anxiety, that have to do with worry. So it could be implicit narratives from childhood. Again, those absolutely permeate every single part of our sense of self, every single part of our interactions with others unconsciously in a knee-jerk way before we've ever even been able to think about it. They just color our worldview. So they're a really big deal. They're a really big thing that you want to work with and rewrite if you want to deal with, your core issues, the things that consistently come up in your life over and over and over again. So it could be implicit narratives that are causing anxiety. It could be just past wounds, old emotions that haven't been processed. Again, oftentimes, especially as young children, we don't have the resources to process our emotions. And so we just shove them into our subconscious, into our shadow. We kind of want to disconnect from them because they don't feel good. But then they continue to live there and they continue to affect our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So current neuroscience tells us that 95% of our thoughts, feelings, motivations, and behaviors actually originate in our subconscious. So as much as we like to identify with our conscious mind, it's it's not what's in control of most of our knee-jerk reactions to life. And so, yeah, so we can get to that stuff in the subconscious, that we can start to rewire it, untangle it, understand it. And we do this all from a place of really deep compassion and understanding, right? Like when I began to understand how painful it was for my inner child to feel shamed in that way, I had great compassion for her. I wanted to hear what she had to say. I wanted to help her unload and process that old pain and that old anger and that old grief that was all around those feelings of shame. So we could just have some old unprocessed emotional wounds or past traumas that are kind of stuck in there that cause us to feel anxious all the time. If we lived in a home where there was lots of really anxious people, then we might just naturally, our state might, be anxious until we do some deeper work. If we lived in a home where things were very volatile, we could have a lot of anxiety lodged in our psyche and in our body, in our nervous system. So there's lots of reasons why we might have anxious thoughts and anxious feelings bubbling up from our subconscious and coloring the way that we see the world, coloring the way we see our present moment, and coloring the way we see our future, what we expect from our future. So there's lots of reasons that you may have some parts of you holding on to that anxiety in your body, in your subconscious psyche, in your nervous system. And that's where the parts work comes in. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of parts work, and then we're actually going to get into the exercise, because again, like I told you, the exercise takes a while, and the exercise is where you're actually going to experience a deep shift. And that's really what I want you to take away from today. But some of this information can be really helpful in having more self-compassion for yourself, having more self-understanding. Oh, and I wanted to mention that this deep parts work for anxiety, the exercise itself, we're going to do it together today, but I also pre-recorded it and put it on Insight Timer with like pretty music behind it. So if it's something that you want to revisit, it's free on Insight Timer, totally free. I put the link in the description to this video so that you can go and listen to it. I hope that you do watch the whole video with me, but in the future, if you just want to do the exercise without the educational component that I'm offering right now, it is free on Insight Timer, and the link is below. And also the link to the other anxiety video that I did last week is below, because I often tell my students and clients that there's multiple levels of healing that we need to do when we want to get really transformational change in our lives. And one is we want to regulate our nervous system. So if you're feeling anxiety all the time, actually, if you're feeling any emotion a lot and it's uncomfortable and it's like high up in the, like on the 0 to 10 range, it's in the higher levels, that probably means no matter what emotion it is, it probably means that your nervous system is dysregulated. And so we work to regulate our nervous systems. And that's really what we were doing last week. It's a nervous system regulation exercise that I offered in the anxiety relief and rewire video. But then when you start to get regulated, you have to go beneath and see what are the roots. Like there's oftentimes content there. I tell my students there's an autonomic level and an autobiographical level in our subconscious. And autonomic means the autonomic nervous system, which is our automatic nervous system, which is, lots of parts of us like our amygdala and our limbic system that keep us spinning and cycling in anxiety, or keep us spinning and cycling in any uncomfortable emotion or uncomfortable story in our lives. And those are kind of our, they're just automatic responses to life that live in our nervous systems. So we have to do the regulation work. But today we're getting to the roots, which I really, really love, because again, when you get to the roots, you can actually rewire and reprogram the deep implicit ways that you deal with yourself and the deep implicit ways that you deal with the world. Okay, so those are like two of the levels of emotional healing, and they're both really necessary, regulate and roots. And so then let me get back to parts work, which I had started to embark upon before I sort of took a detour here. So parts work is just based on the premise that we are naturally made of many different parts. Like there are many different pieces to our consciousness. And this kind of intuitively makes sense because I'm sure we've all had the experience of like, part of me just wants to sit on the couch and eat ice cream, and part of me wants to fold the laundry, right? Part of me wants to veg out, and part of me wants to go outside and get into nature and move my body, right? So we have different parts that have different motivations. They have different personalities. They're all pieces of us. This is totally normal and natural. It's not anything pathological. But we have different pieces that have different motivations, different personalities, different desires, and different effects on our lives. And so I use a tool. So I was trained a little bit in internal family systems, which I really love. That is a type of parts work that I think is absolutely brilliant. And I often teach it to my students because I think the framework is so deeply powerful. But I do parts work using regenerating images in memory because, again, regenerating images in memory helps us drop beneath the conscious mind into these deeper levels. And it's just this deeply effective way to begin to dialogue with these parts, to begin to integrate these parts. Because another part of parts work is that every single part of you has value. Every single part, even if it seems like it's really hurting you right now, right? Like maybe your anxious part, you're like, why would I want to be anxious? Why does that have value? But it's holding a piece of your past pain. It's holding a piece of your wisdom. It's holding a piece of the truth of who you are and what you've experienced. But when we try to push away from these parts, right? They're called exiles in internal family systems talk because we don't want to feel it. We don't want to feel anxious. So we want to push it away. We want to get away from it. When we push them away, when we push them into our subconscious or into our shadow, they actually gain power there and they don't resolve on their own. They need attention. They need love. They need to be reintegrated. And so when we push them away, they go into extreme roles, right? So maybe, my inner child part just needed to be loved. It just needed to be seen. But because I was pushing it away, I didn't even know how to connect with it, right? This is totally innocent. This isn't because we've done something wrong or, any sort of judgment here. But because I just kept pushing her away, I didn't want to hear her. I didn't know how to hear her. I didn't know how to integrate her. She got louder and louder and louder because she was scared, because she was scared of being shamed, because she felt that it was important that I not go out into public or meet new people because the pain of being shamed is so great, right? So she was carrying the pain. She wanted to protect me from more pain, right? So all of that's beautiful, right? Like all of that is completely normal and natural. She needed help processing pain. She wanted to protect me from experiencing more pain. Both of those are completely understandable. There's nothing pathological about them. There's nothing nefarious about that. But it did mean that I felt a lot of social anxiety a lot of the time. So she was in an extreme role, having a negative effect on my life. Whereas with parts work, we dialogue with them. We come into connection with them. We see what they want and need. What do they want to tell us? It's a very deep and beautiful process of compassionately understanding what's actually going on deep inside. And then when that happens, there's an integration that happens. It's like those exiled parts in our subconscious can lay down their burdens and then they don't have to be so extreme. So it's not that my inner child didn't experience that, but I've helped her process some of the pain around it. And I have a new understanding about what happens when I feel anxious. When I feel anxious, instead of pushing it away, I can talk to her and tell her, like, actually, it's okay. What do you need right now? I'm here for you. When we acknowledge that some part of us is feeling something that could be difficult, we can actually deal with it in an integrative way that actually expands our wholeness, that expands our self-love, that expands our self-compassion, that expands our self-understanding, instead of continuing to have to push them away, right? Because the pushing away, it doesn't really work because there's nowhere for them to go. There is no away. It's not like we just pluck them out and throw them in the trash, because they still exist in our psyche. They're still a part of us. And every part of us deserves love, and every part of us deserves understanding. And that, for me, is the deepest meaning of being on a healing journey, is coming into connection with all of these beautiful parts that deserve love and, deserve love now and always deserve love, but probably didn't receive it. If they're causing pain in my life now, then they probably have some unmet needs or some unprocessed emotions that need need attention. So it's through parts work using regenerating images of memory that I have really experienced like the greatest healings of my life, like real integration, real wholeness, real gentleness internally. And it just kind of happens really naturally. So I feel like we're already about 20 minutes in. So I feel like I should get to the exercise just because the exercise takes a while because we're going to go really deep. Um, so anyway, we're going to dive in now, but that's the effect that you'll probably feel from this exercise is that you'll get to know whatever part is holding some piece of your anxiety. You'll get to know it on a very deep level. This is also a somatic exercise. Regenerating images and memory is very body centered. And so we're going to dive in, get to know that part. What does that part need? And by the end of me guiding you through this experience, you really will have an internal shift. You really will feel different in your body, in your nervous system, and you have a much deeper understanding and compassion for whatever is happening there. So without further ado, let's dive into the exercise. Okay, so you will probably want to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with that, just very much soften your gaze. And with your eyes closed, just begin to feel your breath. So you can feel the air moving in and out through your nostrils. You can feel the air causing your chest and tummy to rise and fall. And just imagine that you can breathe in clean, healing energy from the universe with every inhale. And with every exhale, you release tension from a deeper and deeper place within till eventually you're releasing tension all the way from your toes. On your next breath, imagine that you could breathe in through your heart and out through your belly button. Feeling the space and the distance between your heart and your belly button. On your next breath, imagining that you could breathe in through your throat and out through the small of your back. And again, imagining that you could feel the space or the distance between your throat and your back. Breathing in through your right ear and out through your left elbow. Feeling the space and the distance. Breathing in through your left ear and out through your right elbow. Feeling the space and the distance. And then breathing in through your knees and out through the soles of your feet, feeling the space and the distance. And then just breathing in and out through your heart. So as we do this exercise together today, all of your answers are just going to spontaneously arise from your deep inner wisdom through your imagination. And they may show up as words, images, thoughts, feelings, body sensations. And we're just going to welcome whatever shows up, no matter how it shows up. And there's no way to do this wrong. So following your next inhale deep into the core of your being, bring to mind something that makes you anxious, some situation, some person, just bringing to mind some example so that we can really go deeper with what's causing the anxiety. And as you bring this thing to mind that brings up some anxiety, your body is going to have a reaction. So begin to feel the anxiety in your body as a body reaction. So is it more on the right or the left? Or maybe it's centralized, or maybe it's kind of everywhere. Is it more deep or superficial? or maybe both, or maybe neither. Just noticing whatever you're noticing. And you may not have answers to all of the questions that I pose, and that's okay too. Just being curious and asking yourself the question is way more important than getting an answer. Again, there's no way to do this wrong. So you're just noticing whatever's happening in your body. How big is this reaction in your body? Like, how much space does it take up within or around you? What color is this reaction? Does it have a shape or a texture or maybe even an image as you notice it? Is it warm or cool? Is it moving or still? Again, just noticing whatever you're noticing. There's no way to do this wrong. And that reaction in your body, that color, that location, that feeling in your body, that's the anxious part we're going to work with today. So I'm going to start calling that the anxious part. But know that when I say that, I'm referring to this body reaction, to the color, to the location, to the size, whatever it is you're noticing, that's the anxious part we're going to work with today. So you've really tuned into this anxious part, and just take a breath. And your imagination is going to call forward a virtual resource to be here with you on this journey. And a virtual resource is like a guide or an angel or a friend or a kind and loving ancestor. It's really anyone or anything that is safe, loving, and powerful. So just noticing whoever showed up to be here with you today. And if no one shows up to be here with you, just know that you're surrounded by a circle of guardians. So just feeling, what is it like to have this virtual resource with you? Where are they in proximity to you? And just know that this virtual resource or this circle of guardians is going to be with you every step of the way should you need support or protection or anything at all. They're totally here for you. Now, bringing your awareness back to the anxious part. Again, it's that feeling, it's that color, it's that shape, that size, whatever it is that you notice, bringing your attention back to that anxious part. And with your virtual resource with you every step of the way, your imagination is going to take your awareness into the anxious part. You like become the anxious part. You become that color, that shape, that size. You know what the anxious part knows. You feel what it feels. You really become the anxious part. And you're going to speak aloud as the anxious part. Well, you can speak aloud if you feel comfortable, or you can do this in your head, whatever's right for you. So you just let your words come forward. So speaking as the anxious part, you're just going to say, what it's like to be me is. Breathing, feeling whatever you're feeling as this anxious part. Again, just letting your words come forward however they want to without editing them or worrying about it at all. As the anxious part, you're just going to say, what I'm feeling emotionally is. Breathing, feeling, speaking as the anxious part. You're just going to say, Deep down, what I'm struggling with the most is. Breathing, feeling, just letting your words come forward. Speaking as the anxious part, you're just going to say, what I believe about the world is. Breathing, going even deeper, becoming the anxious part even more. And speaking as the anxious part, you're just going to say, what I want or need is. Breathing, feeling, speaking as the anxious part, you're just going to say, how it would feel if I got what I want or need is. Again, there is no way to do this wrong. So just speaking whatever wants to be spoken. And if words aren't coming, that's fine too. You're still not doing it wrong. Breathing, going even deeper into the anxious part. You're just going to say, how it feels to say all of this is. And then just speaking anything else that wants to be spoken from the anxious part until that feels complete. When that feels complete, your imagination is going to take your awareness out of the anxious part and back into all of you, back into the wholeness and totality of who you are. So you're just naturally coming out of the part and becoming all of you, your whole self. So just taking a breath and landing there in the wholeness and totality of you. And as your whole self, you're going to look back at the anxious part and you're going to receive a stream of colored energy from the anxious part representing everything it just shared with you. So, noticing the color and the quality of that stream of colored energy. And as your whole self, just noticing where you receive that in your body first and fully receiving all of that, fully receiving the whole stream of energy from the anxious part. And now, as your whole self, you're going to speak back to the anxious part. So, as your whole self speaking to the anxious part, you're going to say, what I heard from you or what I received from you is. Breathing, speaking as your whole self back to the anxious part, you're just going to say, how it feels to hear that and receive that from you is. Breathing, just letting your words come forward. As your whole self, you're going to say, anxious part, what I want to tell you is. Speaking as your whole self back to the anxious part, you're just going to say, anxious part, what I understand that you don't yet understand is. Breathing, speaking as your whole self back to the anxious part, you're just going to say, how it feels to understand this is. And then speaking again as your whole self back to the anxious part, you're just going to say, anxious part, how it feels to say all of this to you is. Now, just speaking anything else that wants to be spoken from your whole self back to the anxious part until that feels complete. When that feels complete, your imagination is going to take your awareness back into the anxious part. So, back into that color, that feeling, that location. It may have changed or it may be the same. There's no right or wrong, but your imagination just takes your awareness back into the anxious part as you become the anxious part again. You know what it knows, you feel what it feels, you really become it. Now, as the anxious part, you're going to look back at your whole self and receive a stream of colored energy representing everything your whole self just shared with you. So, noticing the color and the quality of that stream of colored energy. As the anxious part, where do you receive that stream of colored energy in your body first? Just fully receiving all of that energy from your whole self. Now, speaking again as the anxious part, again, just letting your words come forward. You're going to speak as the anxious part back to your whole self. And you're going to say, whole self, what I heard from you or what I received from you is. Speaking again as the anxious part back to the whole self, you're just going to say, how it feels to hear this and receive this from you is. Breathing, feeling whatever you're feeling, just letting your words come forward. Speaking as the anxious part back to your whole self, you're just going to say, what I'm realizing now is. Again, speaking as the anxious part, you're just going to say, how it feels to realize this is. Speaking as the anxious part back to your whole self, you're going to say, how I see this helping me moving forward is. And then just speaking anything else that wants to be spoken from the anxious part back to your whole self until that feels complete. When that feels complete, your imagination is going to take your awareness out of the anxious part and back into your whole self, back into the wholeness and totality of you. So just breathing and feeling what you're feeling now. And really notice what feels different now within your body, within your emotions, really noticing what has shifted within you. And what looks different now. Noticing whatever you're noticing. But just know that these shifts that you felt, when you have these spontaneous shifts in body sensation, in emotion, and in perception, that's actually your nervous system rewiring itself. You've actually given this anxious part a new emotional memory that it can draw from. And you've listened to it, you felt it. There's now more integration and understanding. And likely it doesn't have to be so loud anymore. It doesn't have to be so alone anymore. It can lay down the burden as you rewire your relationship with it and with anxiety in general. So now just noticing if anything else wants to happen between you and the anxious part for this to feel complete. And just letting that happen, whatever wants to happen. And it may already be complete. Just trusting whatever you feel, whatever you sense, whatever you notice. Again, knowing that you've rewired something deep within you. You've reprogrammed a subconscious experience. And this will have ripples out into your life. When we work on these deep levels, the ripples are usually very integrative, very gentle, but really, really there. Taking a few more breaths. Now ask your body if there's anything else it wants or needs before we bring this to a close. And just receive whatever answer your body has for you. It may be something your body may want or need something that you could take care of right now. It may be something you need to take care of later, or maybe nothing. Your body may not need anything. But just noticing whatever answer you receive from your body. Now we're going to bring this to a close. So your unconscious mind will let you know that all of this has been fully integrated into your emotional memory and your cellular memory by bringing full feeling and weight back into your arms and legs, fingers and toes, and spontaneously opening your eyes. Great work. So just take a moment, take a few breaths, notice whatever your experience was. And I would love to hear if you want to share in the chat what you felt, what feels different, what looks different. This is really a deep process of taking care of our parts, of understanding what they want, what they need, and moving forward in a different way. And like I said, this regenerating images and memory is just really profound. It has ripples out into your everyday life because when we reprogram the deep roots of what's happening within us, then those changes are very easy in the rest of our life. Oftentimes, we're trying to change our feelings by changing our thoughts or by pretending that we're feeling some way that we aren't. And those are both coming from the conscious mind down. And again, 95% of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors come from the subconscious up, right? So if we're working with the conscious mind down, it can be very difficult to make real change. But when we're working with the subconscious, the change actually occurs very naturally and easily and deeply. So I think you'll find that over the next few days, you'll definitely want to take care of yourself after this process, like extra hydration, extra rest if you need it, extra compassion. Usually it kind of feels wrapped up like a nice bow, but you actually have reprogrammed deep parts of your subconscious by doing that. And so you've been through a lot today. It's really deep work. So, yeah, that is the deep parts work for anxiety. I hope that you feel very different. And I hope that you really enjoyed that. I hope that's supportive on your healing journey. I personally know how painful anxiety can truly be. So, I hope that this brought you some relief, some understanding. And yeah, definitely reach out to me if you want to tell me what that experience was like for you. Again, just as a reminder, that whole exercise is pre-recorded and on Insight Timer with pretty music behind it, so you can get that for free. The link is in the description of this video. And I also want to let you know that I have a free training next week called The Secret Wisdom of Your Triggers. So I talked a lot about the subconscious today. I talked a lot about implicit narratives and why we really need to go inward to heal. And The Secret Wisdom of Your Triggers will even take that a little bit deeper. I'll go even more deeply into what's actually happening in your subconscious and how to actually heal it, because emotional triggers are difficult, but we all have them. And when we know how to listen to them and integrate them, they can actually be huge catalysts on our healing journey. They can actually guide us inward to the parts of us that need healing and are calling out for more attention and healing. So there's also a link that you could enroll in that if you want to join me. It's next Wednesday and it's phenomenal. It's a really great training. So thank you all for being here. All right. Thank you so much for guiding us through that amazing process. So much more love and understanding about a particular anxious feeling. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's beautiful. I'm so happy you had that experience, and really watch the next few days how you'll feel differently naturally. Like the ripples really will come through. Sometimes our conscious mind is the last one to know what changes come. And so I like people to watch the ripples, because that's what allows your conscious mind to be like, oh, yeah, something actually shifted there. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you got so much out of this, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. All right. Take care. Bye.